On today's show, we discuss the Lakers' updated trade plans, what changes JJ Redick needs to make to his schemes, and whether the 2009 Lakers or the 2020 Lakers would win in a best-of-7 series.
Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another episode. On today's show, we're going to be doing part 2 of my 2-part mailbag. Before we get started, you guys know the drill. On the road to 30K subscribers before the season starts. So it would mean the world to me if you would hit that subscribe button if you have not yet done so. Also, please consider turning on channel notifications and liking and commenting on this video. All right, first question here from Tulip Plays. Hey, Jovan, do you think the Lakers will run with what they have and make no more trades till mid-season? This is especially topical this week with a couple of reports coming out, one from Mark Stein and one from Dan Wojcicki of The Athletic, indicating that the Lakers are interested in Andrew Wiggins and have a greater sense of urgency to make an upgrade to the roster, particularly on the wings. There's a lot to unpack with this, so I have a bunch of notes here that I want to talk through. The first thing is that this is not new. I reported about a couple months ago, maybe a little bit longer, that the Lakers and Heat were talking on a trade centered around Wiggins and Rui, and that I was hearing that the Heat's asking price for Andrew Wiggins was astronomically high. It was Rui, Dalton, and a future Lakers first. Because of Miami's high asking price, the talks never really advanced. They never really gained traction. The Lakers were not interested in that type of framework, but there has been some smoke here this offseason with the Lakers and the Heat and Wiggins and Rui. So I want to start with that. Second thing for me is the timing of this is interesting because we are less than 3 weeks away from the start of training camp and media day. And the reporting that came out from The Athletic is indicating that the Lakers are now pivoting and are open to taking on longer term salary and being more aggressive on the trade market because Luka is locked up for now the foreseeable future. The interesting thing with this, for me, is that Luka signed his extension over a month ago. It's been almost over 5 weeks since he signed the extension, and maybe the Lakers didn't want this to come out or be a storyline while Luka was playing in Eurobasket, and the timing was intentional where Luka just lost in Eurobasket, Slovenia lost. And now that Luka's focus is 100% on the Lakers and getting ready for the season, the Lakers are now having this come out that they want people to know they're more open to trading and taking on some long-term money. But it is interesting because I would have thought this would have come out like 5 weeks ago, right when Luka signed the extension, and the initial thing would have been, let's improve the roster, let's find this two-way wing, let's trade a pick or something. And that was not the case. And instead it came out 5 weeks or so later. And I think the impetus behind this to me is one of two things, or potentially both. One is Luka applying some pressure, or at least making it known that he wants an upgrade on the wings. And so if that's the case, then you would think the Lakers are going to do their best to honor that and to give him that, whether it's Wiggins or someone else, try to upgrade the roster, find that type of player. Or two, this is the Lakers trying to publicly negotiate a little bit and see if Miami has changed its asking price for Wiggins, see if that demand has gone down. And with the season on the horizon here, maybe they can find some sort of middle ground. Or three, it could be both. It could be Luka pushing for this or wanting this, asking for this. Again, there's varying degrees of, you could say, I would like to play with Andrew Wiggins, or you could say, go get me Andrew Wiggins, right? Like it's a sliding scale. So I don't have clarity as to if that's the case or not, or how aggressive this is. But it does seem to indicate that Luka is okay with the Lakers going out and taking on extra money beyond this summer. So if that's the case, then the Lakers should explore the trade market. And then two, again, based on the previous talks, which is why I wanted to establish that this has been an ongoing discussion between the Lakers and the Heat this offseason, or an ongoing negotiation to some extent, that the Lakers are now trying to sometimes when these things come out, you start to see, you'll get a Miami report at some point here in the coming days or weeks about their appetite for trading Wiggins or their appetite for trading anybody. And it's kind of how it goes sometimes, is these things leak and then there's a bit of a back and forth. Or again, it could be both things where Luka wants Wiggins, Luka wants a two-way upgrade. The Lakers are trying to specifically look at test Miami's appetite for making a deal, and that's how this is all playing out. The third thing, and to me the most interesting thing, is LA potentially taking on salary beyond this summer or potentially even beyond the following season, because that to me opens up a bunch of trade options for the Lakers. Because one of the things I've talked about when I've gone on here and done mailbags or live streams and answered questions about trade targets is it's been within the scope of the Lakers not looking to take on money beyond next season or beyond 2027. And that limits the pool of players, because I've talked about the Venn diagram of the type of players the Lakers want is like, it's got to be someone better than Rui, better than Gabe Vincent, better than Maxi Kleber, better than Dalton Connect, like combining those contracts into some better player. But that player also has to be, like a young two-way player, a starting level player, like a high level bench player. And they also have to be on a contract that's not going beyond next season or maybe beyond a couple of seasons. And like, those types of players are hard to find, and those types of players are valuable, and those types of players are almost certainly going to require a first-round pick or some form of draft capital based on the contracts the Lakers are trying to trade out. So if the Lakers are willing to expand that search, then I think that opens up different avenues to find longer-term fits, and I think it just changes the calculus with the type of players that they could potentially acquire. So we'll see the Lakers' actual desire to take on longer-term salary, and this is a matter of price, right? And I think that was the other big thing that we saw with Stein's reporting and Wojcicki's reporting, is that it's going to come down to the price, right? And so we can sit here and debate how much better Wiggins is than Rui and what the price should be. I'm currently skeptical that they could pull off a Wiggins trade without including a first. I don't know if Rui and Dalton is enough, or Rui, Dalton, and Gabe, something like that. Like, I don't think that's enough. My understanding is they are still hesitant to put a first-round pick on the table. I think it would have to be a long-term upgrade, a long-term piece to put next to Luka Doncic. I don't think Andrew Wiggins quite reaches that level in their eyes. For me, I would be open to it, Rui, and maybe a protected first or something for Wiggins, but that does not seem to be the way that they are currently viewing it. But they are, if they can swing it with Rui and Dalton or some combination of that general framework, I think that is something that they would be interested in. So it looks like moving forward, because I think Wiggins seems to be the top target for now, and he's been the top target for most of the summer. The Lakers are going to see what can we get with Rui, some unappealing expirings in Gabe Vincent or a Maxi Kleber, a Dalton Connect, and then we have seconds and swaps, or 1 second and multiple swaps to throw in. What's the best thing we could get for that? And then potentially making a move on that. Now, the timing of this will be interesting. Again, with sometimes teams pick up talks right before camp to try and get something figured out so that player can be there for media day, the start of camp, etc. So I would assume there'd be some urgency here to try and figure something out before the beginning of camp. I wouldn't rule that out, but I would say that the most likely outcome continues to be them going into the season with this group and potentially making a move at the earliest, around that December 15th mark, when free agents who just re-sign with their team can be traded. So I think, again, like there's a chance they could figure something out here with Miami or someone else before the season starts. I would assume that this goes into the season and that they potentially make a move sometime between late December through the trade deadline. So I wish I had a better or clearer answer for you. I think this is an encouraging sign, though, and them being open to taking on longer term money, them being more aggressive in the trade market, I think is a good thing. And now we've heard this before, and there's been variations of this in previous seasons of the Lakers being open to making a trade for the right price. Like, how many times have we heard that? So I do want to express a little bit of skepticism overall with some of this. However, if we take it at face value and we just say, okay, they're willing to play ball, they're willing to be aggressive for the right player, for the right move, then I do think this could, like I just said in my last mailbag, my bold prediction was with the right trade, I think the Lakers can be a true championship contender. I stand by that. I'm doubling down on that. And if they can find that move, if it is a Wiggins or if it's someone else, I am very bullish on this team and their ability to compete with an OKC, a Denver, a Houston, etc. So I think we have more questions than answers, honestly, coming out of this whole situation and this week. I think, again, this isn't new with Miami. They've been dancing around each other, kind of eyeing each other from across the bar for several months now with this whole Wiggins-Rui situation. The timing is interesting. And again, it might just be as simple as they didn't want this to be a distraction or a storyline with Luka at Eurobasket, but the timing of Luka loses in Eurobasket, immediately this comes out. I find that interesting. So I would say I'd still lean toward them making some sort of move between, I mean, typically they've tended to make moves closer to the trade deadline and wait things out to mid to late January or right before the trade deadline. I would say that if I'm setting the line for when the Lakers make a move, I still think longer term is the play here. Unless Luka is really pushing this behind the scenes, which I've not gotten confirmation or word of that yet, I think it's still more likely that they do something during the season rather than before it. Next question from Adi20054. What should JJ's scheme be in general on both sides of the ball this season? Offense, I'd hate to see Luka iso ball or any other scenario where LeBron and Austin are not as involved as they should be. On defense, it seems like it has to be a man zone/zone man defense given their personnel, and defensive scheme vision, AR and Smart at the point of attack, and hiding Luka and LeBron on the sides with Ayton dropping according to the situation. I like the attention to detail with the question and your breakdown. I want to start on the offensive end, so I have some numbers here of the Lakers offensive splits pre and post Luka, because of course I don't think it's fair to look at the pre-Luka phase and factor that in here to the scheme analysis. I think they made a lot of changes post Luka and a lot of changes on the fly. So I don't even know if we have a clear idea or a clear picture of what the Lakers offense is going to look like next season based on them making such a seismic trade in the middle of the season, past the middle point of the season, and them having to adjust the offense so dramatically, build the plane in the sky, as Rob has said multiple times. So looking at the splits here, we have pre-Luka 50 games, post-Luka 32 games. Their offensive rating actually went up from 114.4 to 115.9, a jump of 1.5 points per 100 possessions, but their league-wide rank went down because offenses were surging later in the season, I think, as teams start to tank and some of the matchups and stuff. So they actually had a better offense post-Luka than they did pre-Luka, but it ranked worse league-wide, or more effective offense. Just looking at some of the trends here, it was like true shooting was basically the same. The biggest difference was the percent of their field goal attempts that were 2-pointers versus 3-pointers. So they went from a 2-point heavy team to a 3-point heavy team. You look at the shift here, going from 60% of their shots being twos, which ranked 9th, to 53%, which ranked 28th. And then 39% or just under 40% of their shots being threes pre-Luka trade, which ranked 22nd, all the way up to 47%, which ranked 3rd. So we saw a notable shift from the Lakers offensive strategy of becoming a space the floor, high pick and roll team with Luka and Jackson, Luka and whoever, and then a bunch of shooters catch and shoot, spot up guys are dotting the 3-point line. So I think they actually played more into JJ's vision of what he likes. Like I've talked about it. I think if JJ had a dream situation, a dream team, it would be the 2024 Celtics of 5 guys who can shoot and defend multiple positions and switch. And that's the type of basketball JJ wants to play. And that's more of the type of basketball the Lakers played post Luka trade. So you saw their points from the free throw line were about the same. Points in the paint dropped a lot. And this also is partly the Lakers increasing their threes and decreasing their twos. You saw a big shift in points or a percentage of points from points in the paint from 45%, which ranked 9th, to 39%, which ranked 27th. So they're definitely attempting fewer 2-pointers, getting to the paint less. Despite that, they still were getting to the free throw line the same amount. So that's interesting. You also saw a shift from percent of shots made assisted versus unassisted. So the unassisted percentage of shots went, there's an increase. The assist percentage went down, turnover percentage went up, and the pace actually stayed the exact same, 98.34 possessions per game. The high level takeaway for me is just, I've talked about this before, and Crane just has documented this well for those who have listened to him on the show or follow him on social media. I think the Lakers' offensive organization and just consistently running sets and actions and spamming some of the concepts that they're most effective with, and not just evolving into hero ball or ISO ball or just too many simple pick and roll reads. I do think part of this is just what comes with Luka, and like he likes to run the offense a certain way, but I also think there's ways to get him coming off of like that chase 77 action, that there's ways to have him come off ball actions, coming off pin downs, having Austin bring the ball up, having LeBron bring the ball up, having Marcus Smart bring the ball up, and leveraging Luka's post up ability or some sort of Spain pick and roll 3-man actions in the middle of the floor, horns actions. Like there's a lot of different things, a lot of different variations. With the offensive end, it's a combination of more creativity overall with the type of ways they use Luka, use Austin, use LeBron, but also more structure. So I think a little bit more sets and organization with the spacing, and just sometimes it felt like they were a bit aimless and hoping that their talent or skill would bail them out. And I would like to see a little bit more structure to the offense overall. But I think I'd like to see more LeBron, Luka 2-man game. I think there are certainly some matchups you want to avoid it, but also matchups you want to exploit it. And of note, the Lakers had a 121.9 offensive rating in the regular season with Luka, Austin, and LeBron on the floor together, which would have led the NBA. So they performed as a league best offense with those three on the floor. It was actually the defensive end where they had a 121.6 defensive rating, which would have been the worst in the NBA, where they need to figure things out. So despite the Lakers, I think overall underachieving on the offensive end, both pre-Luka trade and post-Luka trade, I never felt like they hit their ceiling or got close to their upside scenario. With Luka, Austin, and LeBron on the floor, they were really good offensively. They were really difficult to stop. It was actually the defensive end where they had more concerns. But in summation, I think creativity and structure are both the things that come to mind with the scheme. In terms of the defensive end, I think there are real limitations with this roster. So I don't want to sit here and claim that there's going to be any scheme or strategy for JJ to implement that will have this team be a top 5 or even top 10 defense. I think on paper, they just don't have the personnel or the defensive talent or skill or ability to be a top 10 defense consistently. I think we saw during that 20-4 stretch where they're the league's best defense that they were able to execute it. And as I've said before, there were like 4 iterations of the group during that stretch, including with AD, without AD, with Luka, without Luka. So they had all these variations, and they're able to cobble together a stretch of about 6 weeks where they went 20-4. However, before that stretch and after that stretch, they were a bottom 10 defense in the preceding and following stretches. And I do think this group looks like more of an average-ish defense to potentially even slightly below average. So I think there are some real defensive concerns, in my opinion. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't strive to be better than the league's worst defense with their 3 best players on the floor. So in terms of actual changes I would make to the defensive scheme, I think either, number one, they have to be more selective with their switching and just admit that they don't have a switch-heavy personnel, especially with that starting group, whether it's Rui or whether it's Marcus Smart. I think there are real limitations there in terms of their switching ability. And I think DeAndre Ayton can switch out onto some wings and even some guards, depending on the matchup, depending on the context. But I would recommend not doing that. I think he's better in a higher drop or playing up to touch, and maybe even mixing in some blitzing or hedging or whatever. But I think I'd rather play coverage with DeAndre Ayton rather than have him switch out. I don't think he's as mobile as, say, Jackson Hayes, who one of his strengths defensively was his switching rather than his rim protection or his interior defense or his post defense. So I think DeAndre Ayton is just a different defender, certainly different than AD, but also different than Jackson Hayes. And the Lakers probably need to switch to more of a coverage defense where you have the point of attack guy that you're mentioning, the Marcus Smart, the Austin Reaves, and that guy's fighting over screens or going under, depending on who the ball handler is, depending on whether they're a shooter or not. So I think you're probably playing more base coverage with your defense, and maybe you're switching Luka, LeBron, Rui, Luka, LeBron, Marcus Smart. Again, I think it's hard to give a blanket answer here. I think it's really personnel based, but I think in general, they probably need to lean away from a switching scheme. I think there are certain lineups that can switch, to be clear. If DeAndre Ayton's off the floor, maybe Jackson's out there, or maybe they're going with a small ball look, then you could switch 2 to 5 or maybe even 1 to 5, depending on who's out there. But I think playing more base coverage, I think would be more effective with this group. And then I think the second thing for me, and this could again be an either or this could be both. I think they have to be better with their help. And I think too many times last season, they left Austin and Luka and Gabe and whoever was being picked on an island. And I don't think that their help in those instances was appropriate. I think they need to be more aggressive with either pre-switching. So if you see Luka or Austin's man is about to come up, you switch that action immediately, or scram switching, which is if they've come up, you send someone over and then there's a rotation there and everyone is filling in the gaps of then the next guy rotates over, then it's on Austin and Luka to be engaged and see where the opening is and make sure they're covering that. But pre-switching or scram switching or just sending a lot more help, though, that leads to the open threes that you also referenced in your question. It's tough. It's tricky. The Lakers were at times willing to live with the open threes, especially to certain non-shooters. But I think being more aggressive with the pre-switching, the scram switching, and or sending more help. We saw it at times against Minnesota, but I think they didn't do as much pre-switching as scram switching as I would recommend, just because I think if you're allowing Austin or Luka to be picked on by an Anthony Edwards, by a Julius Randle, by a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, whoever it is, I just think the good offense is going to win out. And these guys are too skilled, too talented, where I can understand if they're like, well, we want to get them out of rhythm and maybe more into like an ISO-based game. And I just think some of the guys, like the best example that I've referenced multiple times was like the beginning of the season when they were in Phoenix. Phoenix had the big comeback against them, and Kevin Durant was just ISOing Gabe Vincent and drilled several jumpers over him during the fourth quarter. And it was like, Gabe Vincent should not be switched on to Kevin Durant. That's a failure of your defense. That is a mistake. So I think they need to be better with the pre-switching and the scram switching. I also think they need to play more coverage and then offensively more creativity with where they're putting certain guys on the floor, particularly their 3 best players, and then also more structure of just more actions and more intentionality behind the offense. So I think if they do those 2 things, they should be better on both sides of the ball. And I project them to have a top 10, if not top 5 offense and be somewhere around league average on defense. Next question from Rami Walkowicz, 8826. I probably just butchered your last name. I apologize. How do you feel about the dichotomy between the win now rhetoric being used by Pelinka and their willingness to settle for a roster that can't make a deep playoff run? Because not giving Luka a decent starting small forward nor a backup center is definitely not a true win now approach. It's just a lie. It's a fair question. You're putting me on the hot seat here. What I would say with this is I think it's too early to write off the Lakers being in win now mode. I think we will have a better sense by the trade deadline in February, and whether they make a move or they don't make a move, then we will be able to assess things at that point. Now, at the same time, I have been vocal and critical about their lack of urgency with making trades over the last few off seasons. It's been over 3 years since they made an off-season trade. They want the entire 2023 offseason, the entire 2024 offseason, and as of this recording, the entire 2025 offseason without making a trade. And for an organization that has been in win-now mode since they acquired LeBron James, who's been arguably the most win-now player of all time, a player who continues to defy father time and be in the top 10. Their lack of urgency at times over the last few years, I do think it is worthy of criticism, and it will be interesting to see how they navigate Luka and his urgency and how the moves he wants them to make, and whether the Andrew Wiggins situation is one of those things that he is pushing for or asking for. Again, it's a sliding scale in terms of how much pressure a player is willing to put. But I think it's premature to write them off as not being win now. I agree with the assessment that there are a couple of clear holes in the roster. I think their two-way perimeter play is not where it should be and is not really in comparison with some of the top teams in the West. I think that's my biggest gripe with this roster construction. I also think the backup center position is concerning, and I think that you need to upgrade either the Jackson Hayes or Maxi Kleber spot, if not both, but at least one of them. But I think I want to see what happens before the season. I want to see what happens during the season, and maybe this team exceeds expectations. Maybe all of the ifs hit. JJ is better in year 2. Luka is in MVP form. LeBron remains an All-NBA second or third team guy. Austin takes a step. DeAndre Ayton returns to being his Phoenix form. Marcus Smart returns to his Boston form. Jake LaRavia pops. Dalton takes a step. Like there's a lot of ifs. Vando and Gabe Vincent perform to the level of their contracts. Like if all those things hit, and I assume not all will, just because I just listed out like 9 ifs, then maybe the Lakers don't need to make a move. But in general, I'm with you in the sense of I think they need to make at least one move. And if they make the right move, I think they can go on a deep playoff run and truly contend. I think it's just about making that right move. I think there is a little bit of talking out of both sides of their mouth in terms of if they are serious about winning now, I think they have to make a trade at some point ahead of the deadline. I think if they just stand pat with this roster, I do not think this roster is good enough to truly contend. I think, again, 9 or 10 things would have to go right, including, I didn't even mention like health for everybody. All those things would have to go right for them to truly contend. And even then it might not be enough. So I'm with you with that, but we're not, if we're sitting here on mid-February and the Lakers are like the 7th seed and they didn't make a trade, then I think it's worthy to criticize or to really go after the front office for some of the things that they've said. But I think it's premature. We're not there yet. But I do agree with I do not think they're all in. I do not think they are fully in win now mode. I think the only way to truly prove that is to make a trade. And we'll see if they do. But until they don't, I think it's fair to criticize, but I wouldn't completely write that off, right? Like I think there's still time for them to do it. I do think it's better to do it in the offseason. I think it's better to build the roster now and then make tweaks closer to the deadline if you need to. I don't know if they're going to do that. I guess we'll see in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, I hear you though. I think there's certainly some valid criticism with that. Then another one, you guys are really putting me on the hot seat here. Next one from Alden G. Do you have confidence in the Luka era being better than Rob's LBJ AD years, which were pretty underwhelming / mistake riddled? I don't think new ownership / more investment is going to change the fact Rob prefers top star heavy teams with compromised depth. He also clearly has no real vision on team building and just defers to the needs of his stars. Good front offices like OKC, Denver, and Boston do not operate like this. Really holding my feet to the fire with this one. I would push back a little bit on the characterization of Denver as a good front office. I think they had an incredible offseason, potentially the best offseason of any team. But I think they've made mistakes through the years, both with draft picks, with their backup center positions. KCP and Bruce Brown were a little bit out of their control to an extent. Like I think they've generally been in win now mode, but their teams have not been very deep over the last few years. And I think they've had some mistakes with talent evaluation, both in free agency and the draft. So I would say Denver is maybe like above average, but I don't know if I'd throw them in the Boston OKC mix. I think Boston's track record, they had multiple, really like a half decade run as a consistent Eastern Conference finalist. They just won a championship in 2024. So Boston, I would put as a really good, top 5, top 3 front office. Sam Presti just won a championship, has a million picks, is loaded for the next half decade plus. And I think he's one of the best GMs, if not the best GM in basketball. So those are two elite front offices that I will give you have clear strategy and basketball identity and philosophies, and comparing them to the Lakers, like I think those are both stronger front offices. Now, in terms of my confidence level, it's hard to say. I would like to see what the Lakers do on the trade market. I would like to have a little bit of a larger sample size with the roster building around Luka. I will say I was impressed with this offseason. I think this is the best offseason the Lakers have had since 2019, which was like putting aside the AD trade, which of course, but just in terms of like building out the roster, the supporting cast, I would say this is probably the best offseason they've had since 2019. I really liked the DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia moves. I agree with several of your points. I think my consistent criticism of the roster building of the last few years, I think really going back to, let's say, like 2021 or that 2020, 2021 roster. Since then, Lakers rosters have had three consistent weaknesses. Number one, they have lacked two-way perimeter talent. Most of their wings and perimeter guys have been one-way players. Some of them have been zero-way players, but most of them, basically all of them, have been one-way guys or 1.5 way guys. They haven't really had two-way guys on the perimeter, be it guards or wings. Second thing has been the backup center spot has been a mess. Behind AD and now behind DeAndre Ayton, they've had a revolving cast of minimum retreads, journeymen who just aren't very good. They've also trended more toward the offensive end when I think they've needed to trend more toward the defensive end with some of those guys. And it's just been, I think, one of the worst backup center groups in the league for several years now. I mean, like, I think it really is like lottery level comparing most of their backups. And then the final thing has just been the overall depth of the roster. I think they rarely go beyond 7 deep of like quality rotation guys, and they're putting like 8th and 9th men that should be like 11th men for a lot of other teams. And I think we've seen in the playoffs, like the lack of depth has really hurt them in the couple of Denver series and the Minnesota series. And I think that's been big reasons why they lost those series collectively. They're 2-12 in their last 3 playoff series. And I think a big part of that has been the depth of the roster or lack thereof. So I think this year's roster is deeper. I think this year's roster still has the backup center issue. And I think this year's roster projects better on the two-way perimeter play, but that's still a concern of mine and still the primary concern of mine with this overall group. So I feel like there's some blind spots that just are consistently there and that are consistently not addressed. And I don't really know. I can't really speak to the basketball philosophy. I think there has been a shift toward more modernization and shooting more threes and spacing. And I think if you look at a lot of the guys they've signed, whether it's a Malik Monk, a Lonnie Walker, a Kendrick Nunn, it's a lot of pedigree guys. It's a lot of skill and flash and sizzle. And I think there are some trends with the player archetypes. I do think overall they prioritize offense more than defense, and they've been looking for those types of guys. And I think the defensive talent has probably been the biggest thing, which is ironic because that was the strength of the 2020 team and even the 2021 team. And then since then, it's been downhill. And I think they've really struggled to find high impact defenders who are not like one-sided guys, right? Like, again, guys who can give you, at least be like 40th percentile offensive players and be good defenders. I don't think they've had many, if any, of those guys over the last few seasons. So I think it's going to be like Marcus Smart should be a big boost, and we'll see if guys like Gabe Vincent and Jared Vanderbilt can bounce back and be more effective rotation guys. But I don't have a great answer in terms of confidence moving forward. I am cautiously optimistic that with the new ownership change and the investment or future investment in the front office and building it out and maybe getting some outside voices in the room, that will lead to better and more consistent philosophy and execution from the front office. But I don't think we have enough of it. Like, if we want to just judge it based on the sample size of the last few years, then that would give me some cause for concern. If we want to base it off of post Luka and what they've done, I'm cautiously optimistic. So I don't think we have enough of a sample size for me to give you a true answer yet. But I would say, like, let's check back in next summer and see how this season went if they made a move, and then what they do next offseason. Next question from J-Note Music. Do you think AR is really worth 35 plus million? And if so, what is the best and most realistic way to build around him and Luka with the remaining amount of money after LeBron leaves or retires? Austin questions are always fun because I know there will be a section of the audience that disagrees with everything I'm about to say. But if we pull up Spot Track here and look at the contracts between 30 and we'll say 37.5 million, let's go through some of the players and how Austin compares. So we got Jalen Johnson, Tyler Hero, Jalen Suggs, Jared Allen, Chris Middleton, Brandon Ingram, Jeremy Grant, Jordan Poole, Emmanuel Quickley, De'Aaron Fox, Bam Adebayo, Julius Randle, Drew Holiday, Aaron Gordon, Jalen Green, Shea, MPJ, Rudy Gobert, Alperen Şengün, Mikal Bridges. So we know longer term guys like Şengün, Shea, De'Aaron Fox, they have mega extensions coming up or kicking in. So those guys are in a different class. Bam Adebayo, like those guys are making more money longer term. So we're taking them out of this. But looking at guys like Tyler Hero, Jalen Suggs, Chris Middleton, Ingram, I'm going to put Grant aside because that's an old contract, but like Poole, Quickly, Gordon, Green, MPJ, like I think Austin Reaves is in that class of low to mid 30s. And when you get into the 40 million, it's a little bit of a different tier of player. It's the Kyries, the Darius Garlands, actually Brandon Ingram's here. And that's, I guess, part of his extension. But like the Maxis, the LaMelos, and like the Desmond Bains at just under 40. So I think Austin is clearly a $30 million a year player. I don't think that's a controversial take. I think if you don't believe that, you just, I don't know, don't like Austin. And this has nothing to do with the Lakers. This is just in 2026-27, Austin is going to be getting paid 30 plus million for the Lakers or for someone else. Like that is going to happen here. In terms of 35, I think if we're talking like just Lakers or for another team, I think it's very context based. I would like to see what he looks like next to Luka for a full season. I would like to see what he looks like in the playoffs again. I think if there are struggles with his off-ball play, if there are struggles with his defense, if there are struggles with his legs or conditioning or just him wearing down over the course of the season, then maybe that's closer to that $30 to $32 million range. If he takes another step next season, if there's shooting returns to form, if the defense is better, if the physicality and just overall ability to withstand the course of an 82 game season plus the playoffs is better, and he fits very well next to Luka and LeBron, although we are talking post LeBron here, if that fit is as good as I think it can be, then I think we're talking in the mid to high 30s. So I think it's tough to I would peg him right now as like a $33 to $35 million player based on the market and based on his production, and maybe even closer to that 35. However, I think that could change depending on, does he continue to progress this season? How does he fit next to Luka? How does he perform in the playoffs? And if he doesn't fit well next to Luka, if he doesn't continue to progress, if he doesn't play well in the playoffs, then I think you bump that down closer to 30. So, we're talking about a scale of a few million in either direction here, but I think Austin has proven himself to be at least a $30 million player. When we start talking about the 35, 37, somewhere in that range, I think he needs to continue to progress and also deliver in the playoffs. And I think he has delivered in the playoffs. I think he's gotten better every year. I think he has delivered in the playoffs for the most part, with this last series against Minnesota being pretty tough. And it's tough to give you an answer right now, but I think he's probably going to be somewhere in that 30 to 35 million range as a starting point. And remember, these contracts tend to escalate. It's rarely a flat contract. Some cases it is, but so I could see something like maybe 30, 32, 35, 37, like an escalating contract that way, or maybe it's 32 or 33, then it goes up to 35, then it goes up to 37, then like 39 in like the fourth year, final year, whatever. So I could also see something like that where maybe like the average annual value is in that 34 to 36 range, but the starting points maybe at 30 or 32. But I think it's too early to say what type of contract Austin is going to get. We got to see how the season goes. The only thing I'll say, as I've continued to say since January, is that I would be stunned if he gets under $30 million on an annual basis starting next summer. I think it's going to be at least 30, if not higher. But whether it's 35 or 37, I don't think we'll have a great sense until next offseason. In terms of how to build around Luka and Austin, we'll also have a better sense of just their fit together and where some of the weaknesses are or where some of the holes in Luka Austin lineups are, because they were really good together. With Luka and Austin on the floor together and LeBron off, the Lakers outscored opponents by 24 points per 100 possessions. It was only in 223 minutes, so you'd like to see those minutes get up closer to the high hundreds or closer to 1,000. But the early returns of Luka and Austin together were encouraging, and I think there is something there where those two can coexist. I would say in terms of building the rest of the roster, you need two-way players. You need two-way wings. You need athletic, defensive-minded bigs. And I think you need to support those two with a certain level of defensive versatility and athleticism and physicality and size. I think if you go back to that 2023-24 Dallas mold with athletic rim running centers like Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, and you have some two-way play with guys like PJ Washington and Derek Jones, and you're putting those guys around Luka and Austin. I think Luka and Austin can work really well together. So I think like you have a relatively narrow roster build where you have to over-index on size and athleticism and physicality and defense with the rest of the group. But with those two guys leading your offense, I think you're going to be in a great shape. You're going to have an elite offense. And I think it just comes down to, supporting them with the right types of pieces with the rest of the group. Next question from Brian Farmer, 5821. Which team would win in a best of 7 series? The best Kobe-led post-Shaq era team or the best LeBron Lakers team? I think there are two clear answers in terms of the matchup here. I think it's the 2008-2009 Lakers team coming off of the heartbreak of making the 2008 finals, going on that run, post-Powell trade, and then losing to Boston and getting their asses kicked in that game 6, 39-point drubbing, and being embarrassed in that way and having to sit with that, having to have that taste in their mouth for the entire season and winning 65 games, winning the championship. So I think the 2009 Lakers are the choice for the best Kobe-led post-Shaq team. So we got the 2009 Lakers in one corner, and then easily the 2020 Lakers. They won the championship. Best LeBron team. You have best version of AD we saw as a Laker. I think best version of LeBron we've seen as a Laker. And that combination was lethal. They were the number 1 seed. They won the championship. So I have some numbers here before we get into the specifics of the matchup, and you forced me into making a prediction. So 2009 Lakers versus the 2020 Lakers. 2009 Lakers went 65-17 in the regular season. They had a plus 7.9 net rating, which is elite, third best net rating in the NBA. They were third in offense and sixth in defense, so top 6 on both sides of the ball. In the playoffs, they went 16-7. They had a plus 8.2 net rating, which was also third best during the playoff run, fourth in offense, first in defense. So in both the regular season and the playoffs, they were top 6 in offense and defense. And so this was a true two-way team that for their time, like that's always the tough thing, is comparing the eras, because even like the 2020 team was not a well-regarded team in terms of their three-point shooting and floor spacing, but they took over double the amount of threes as the 2009 team. So it's like, it's hard to compare even with these teams only being separated by 11 years. But 2009 team was elite in the regular season, they were elite in the playoffs, and they were top 6 on both sides of the ball. Now the 2020 team, they go 52-19. Remember, shortened season because of COVID, but that was a 60-win pace. So for argument's sake, we'll say 60-22 for the 2020 team. They had a plus 5.6 net rating, which was 5th best in the NBA, 11th in offense, 3rd in defense. Then in the playoffs, they go 16-5, which is a better record than the 2009 team, plus 6.9 net rating. So net rating got better. That's an elite mark. Second in offense, sixth in defense, and first in net rating overall in the playoffs. So the 2020 team was more of a playoff riser, I would say, at least compared to their regular season performance. They had the better playoff record. They increased their net rating by a higher amount. They went from the 11th best offense to the second best offense, so they really rose in the bubble as an offensive team. But overall, the 2009 team's performance was better relative to their competition. If we want to nitpick a little bit, going through the teams they faced, I think the 2020 team had a tougher path. I think that Portland team was better than the Utah team. Remember, the Portland team was getting the buzz as like the best 8 seed of all time, and people were picking them to beat the Lakers. And 2020 Rockets team was certainly better than the 2009 Rockets team. The 2020 team was without a center, but the 2009 team was without T-Mac, and that was Yao and a bunch of role players versus James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and a bunch of shooters and wings. In the conference finals, we could debate that. Denver was the surprise team in 2020 versus that 2009 team that was led by Melo. Maybe we give the nod to the 2009 team, though I think it's closer than people would think. That 2020 team ultimately won a title after the Aaron Gordon trade. And then in the finals, Orlando, I think, was a better team than Miami, but Miami was like the team of the bubble. They were, they caught fire. Jimmy was amazing. In comparison with their peers, both in the regular season and playoffs, I give the nod to the 2009 team. In terms of playoff competition and tougher road to the finals, I actually give it to the 2020 team. Of course, it's got to be a Kobe LeBron debate at some point. So Kobe in the regular season, 27, 5, and 5 on 47, 35, 86 shooting splits. LeBron, 25, 8, and 10 on 49, 35, 69. Really close there. I mean, that kind of sums them up, right? Like Kobe scored more, LeBron more assists and rebounds. And then in the playoffs, LeBron bumped up to 28, 11, and 9 on 56, 37, 72 shooting splits. Kobe bumped up to 35 and 6 on 46, 35, 88 shooting splits. So I think Kobe was closer to his prime for what that's worth. But LeBron was amazing during the 2020 playoffs. Then you got Powell versus AD, where I think AD is the better player. And look at the playoff numbers. He was averaging almost 10 more points per game than Powell, to say nothing of the defensive end, where I think AD is a much better defender. This gets into some interesting matchup things because both teams had size. The 2009 Lakers had Bynum, Powell, and Lamar Odom, Trevor Ariza. The 2020 Lakers had AD, LeBron, Kuz, JaVale, Dwight. So the size is pretty even there. If anything, I actually give the 2020 Lakers a little bit of like the athleticism, length, edge with the front courts. I think the guard play, looking at Rondo, I mean, it depends if we consider LeBron a guard, but like LeBron, Rondo, Caruso, KCP, Danny Green versus Kobe, Derek Fisher, Jordan Farmar, Sasha Vujacic, Shannon Brown. I would give the 2020 team the edge there. So I think the 2009 team, we could debate Kobe versus LeBron, and I don't really want to get into that. I think where they have some edges, like I think their size is overall more talented. With Powell, Bynum, Odom is better than, let's say, AD, Kuz, and Dwight. Like I would give the 2009 team more of an advantage there. I think 2020 LeBron and AD, especially with AD's jumper falling, I think that's a big thing here. Like if AD's jumper's falling, that takes him to a different level as a player. But I think that duo is better than 2009 Kobe and Powell. However, I think spots 3 to 5 in the rotation or in the roster pecking order of Lamar, Andrew Bynum, Trevor Ariza, even you want to put Fisher 6th, whatever, 3 to 6, 3 to 5 is better than the 2020 team of KCP, Kuz, Caruso. Like it's close. It's close, but I would give a slight edge to 2009. I think there's a big drop off though once you get into like the Farmar, Vujacic, Shannon Brown versus the depth of the 2020 team. So I think the 2020 team is actually a little bit bigger, a little bit better defensively, and is has a kind of more two-way players, a little bit more depth. But the 2019 like it is more top heavy, but they were obviously really good. 65 wins, basically +8 net rating in both the regular season and playoffs. And then, I don't know. I kind of view AD as it's a little bit of a cop out here, but I view AD as the swing factor of like, how would AD fare against a Powell Bynum front court, a Powell Odom front court? I think he would fare well. I kind of want to say 2020 in 7, but I think it's really close. I think you're splitting hairs. Like, I don't think there's a clear answer here. I know from a nostalgia perspective, people are going to say 2009 because it's Kobe, because it's Powell. And I get that those are two of like people's top 3, favorite Lakers over the last 20, 25 years. And I get it, right? Like, I mean, Kobe's Kobe, it's self-explanatory, but like Powell is beloved and I get it. But if we're talking like, I think, I don't know, man. It's tough. It's tough. I give a slight edge to 2020, but I think it's also tough to compare the eras because if 2020 is shooting more threes than 2009, that's going to give them an edge. Like just stylistically, the teams were in such different places that, again, relative to the competition, 2009 was better, but I think 2020 had better competition. So I don't know. I guess I think AD is the swing factor where if we say Kobe versus LeBron is a wash or close to a wash, I do think AD is the gap between AD and Powell, especially 2020 AD, is sizable enough to shift it toward. I feel like 2020 had better top end talent. They also had a lot of defensive versatility with Caruso, KCP, Danny Green, Kuz, to say nothing of LeBron and AD defensively. Like also, like Dwight was awesome. I would say I give the slightest edge. I'm not great with lines, but if I was doing a Vegas line, I'd say maybe like -120 for the 2020 team. But love to hear what you guys think. I'm sure there will be plenty of rational reactions to my pick. Next one from Fun Size Lou. Letting Jordan Goodwin go to sign Marcus Smart feels like a short-sighted move. We'll see if it registers on the Caru-bac scale of errors. This isn't a question, it's a notice of concern. I hear you. I like that you referenced my Caru-bac scale. I don't think I'd called it that. I think I called it the Caruso-Zubac scale, but Caru-bac has a nice flow to it. And for those who are unaware, of course, I think letting Alex Caruso go to Chicago and trading away Ivica Zubac were arguably LA's 2 biggest mistakes, or at least non-Westbrook mistakes of the past half decade or so. I think both guys would have fit in perfectly with this year's roster, would fit in perfectly around Luka and Austin and LeBron. And it's unfortunate for them that they decided to move on, and really just an epic talent evaluation failure with both guys. But in terms of Jordan Goodwin, like I think the Lakers should have tried to find other ways to keep him on the roster and clear cap space in a different way, right? And that would have had to have been by trading a Gabe or a Maxey. And of course, I don't think you do that just for Jordan Goodwin, but I think the upside is you trade them to give yourself some flexibility and potentially get something back. And but if you can clear some extra space in that trade and then keep a Goodwin, that's where more so where I'm taking this. I think for me, it's probably a 2 on the scale. I think I'd set a 1 through 5 scale. I would probably put it as a 2. It could certainly grow to a 2.5 or 3, depending on how he performs over the course of his career, and then also how Marcus Smart performs, because he is a poor man's Marcus Smart. I think that the key difference with those two guys is, Marcus Smart is more of a sample size of being a plus starting level, high level bench guy for contenders. And I also think Marcus Smart is a more talented offensive player in terms of the ball handling, the playmaking, and the scoring / shooting. I do think Jordan Goodwin was an awesome fit as a role player, as a cutter, as a screener, as an offensive rebounder, as a short roll playmaker. Like he had a lot of, I was a Jordan Goodwin fan, and I criticized them letting him go. And I do think he's better than the last few players on the roster and would have been in contention for a back end rotation spot. But I think adding Smart, there was some duplication, of course. And we'll see, Marcus Smart has to stay healthy and play better for this to make sense. But assuming he does at least one of those two, I think it's less of a mistake. But who knows? Like if Jordan Goodwin continues to progress offensively and grow into a better shooter and a better overall offensive player, then this could easily become a 2.5, 3.5 type mistake. But I think for now, I would peg this as more of like a 2 out of 5 on the scale. It's another example of some of the mismanagement of the back end of the roster, but I don't know that it quite, like, we'll see. You could be right. I just, for now, I'll put it at like a 2 out of 5. Last one from Black Phoenix Song. What are your thoughts on Anthony Black from Orlando for the post-LeBron era, perhaps post-Reaves as well, if he gets moved? He may be unnecessary after Bane is added to their guard rotation and seems like he can grow into a playmaking / defensive 2-3. I really like Anthony Black. I think with Orlando, they seem to be, because they have so much depth and so many young pieces and so many funky, interesting young pieces, which I would categorize Anthony Black as one of those guys. I think they're a popular trade destination or trade target for a lot of fan bases around the league. And I get it. I just look at Orlando and I'm like, this could be the third or maybe even second best team in the East if like they really hit their ceiling. And I don't see why they would give up a guy like Anthony Black. Like, yes, adding in Desmond Bane changes the dynamic of their backcourt, but it's not as if Desmond Bane and Jalen Suggs are beacons of health. And I think having an Anthony Black as sometimes a backup point guard, but also sometimes a backup wing, like he can do multiple things and wear multiple hats. Like I see some shades of young Sean Livingston in there, and like he even some Golden State Sean Livingston, where he's got the size and he can bring the ball up the floor. He's a pest defensively, can block shots, can pick up 94 feet, defend multiple positions. But then offensively, he's not like the quickest guy. He's not the most explosive, but he is athletic. He is big. He is long. He can finish around the basket. He's got a bit of a mid-range game, and he's developing as a shooter. That's why I make the Sean Livingston comparison, just because of the size of like a lead ball handling guard, though he can do different things and play off the ball when necessary. For now, like I don't think he's a real candidate to be a Laker, but that type of player archetype, whether that is eventually a starter or the third guard on this team, like I do like that player archetype. And I think those are the types of guys the Lakers should be trying to draft and or acquire at some point in the future. But, I think Anthony Black is a guy who I'm interested to see how he develops in Orlando and what their vision for him is and what his role is. But I like this question because I get a lot of, I've gotten Wendell Carter before or Goga Batadze and now, Anthony Black. And like, I know he's a popular trade guy, but I don't see why Orlando, like the Lakers don't have much to offer. He's in that, I think he's making like $8 million this year, $10 million next year, team option, which Orlando will pick up. You're not getting him for Gabe Vincent in a second. You're not getting him for Maxi Kleber in a second. And I don't see the Lakers putting a first on the table. So I just don't see a realistic trade scenario for Anthony Black, but I do like him. I think he can fit next to Luka and Austin as he continues to develop his jumper. I think young, athletic, dynamic players are the types of guys the Lakers need to try to find and build their roster with. And so he certainly checks that box, but I don't see him being available in general necessarily, but particularly with what the Lakers have to offer, I don't really see a clear trade for both sides. But that'll do it for today's show. Thank you so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on channel notifications and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back next week. I'll talk to you then.